So as we're working on transcribing these historic documents, you all know if you've done it before, you zoom in, you zoom out, you look at the letters closer, you squint at it and try to decipher what that word might be. And the more you think about those marks that were made on the paper, the more we think about how they were made. And that's why we invited today's keynote speaker, Z. Ingram. Z is a self-proclaimed nerd and lexiphile. I think that might apply to many people in the room. They were introduced to calligraphy in 3rd grade and fell fast in love with all things pen and paper. When not teaching calligraphy workshops, they are usually at home. As a night owl, Z usually greets the dawn practicing a script, working on a commission, or penning a pen pal letter. So here we go, Z. Ingram. Thank you.
So we start looking at letters from colonial times, when the colonies were situated over here in the 1600s into the 1650s. They traveled over here with some of these scripts that you see on the screen. Most of these scripts had a job associated with it. So if you were a court stenographer or a pen person, you would write in this hand down here, which is insane to me. Most people wrote in the Italian hand here. So this is basically what you're looking at when you're transcribing these documents, is some variation of Italian hand. So how did these people learn how to write? And who could do it? Who wants to take a guess at who was writing all these documents? Men, yes. It was the men. It was men like this guy, Benjamin Franklin, who attended a school in Boston where his teacher, George Brownell, oh no, I got that wrong. He started in Boston. He ended up in Philadelphia, and one of his students was this guy. Now, in these schools, you would learn a script based on your desired career goals. So if you wanted to be a merchant, or if you wanted to trade in black bodies, then you would learn a script that was just for that job. 200 years later, or 100 years later, they let the ladies join. Now the ladies, they had to learn from a copybook that was normally purchased at a small store, and they practiced it on their own. As a woman of the time, you were made to teach children how to read, and a part of your job was to attract a man, get a husband, and do all the duties at home. And part of those duties were dancing, singing, doing needlework, and eventually writing. So these are the tools that students, men in school, would learn how to pen their words. The quill pen was a feather plucked from the left or the right side of the flight wings of a bird. It could have been a goose, a turkey, a swan, a chicken, a pheasant. The chicken quills look and produce terrible writing, terrible. So while you're sitting in school, you're learning how to cut this quill. After you've plucked it, you soak it in water to soften it, and then you dry it in hot sand, kind of like the way they make Turkish coffee in the hot sand to raise it up, the same way you prepare a quill. Then you remove the vein, a vein similar to that of veins in shrimp, I guess. And then you have to become dexterous with a knife. So you hold the quill in front of you like this, and you scrape downwards to avoid stabbing yourself, to produce the tip that you want, to produce the lettering that you want. So in the middle, you'll see several different styles of a cut quill. These styles would produce Italian hand, that court script I showed you earlier. "70 years later, the steel nib was invented. It was invented in the early 1800s, but it came out of England. And over here, we were rejecting England, so we had to make our own stuff. And in making our own stuff, we made too many. Too many like this. So I've touched almost all of these sorts of nibs, and they are a pain in the butt to manipulate. But I would think it's much easier than using a quill pen. So also in school, when they're learning how to make their pen, they also have to make their ink. The inks that, of the documents that you were transcribing, 99.999% of it was iron gall. And iron gall is made from gall nuts. And you drop in some iron sulfate, some water. Rainwater was preferred at the time. If you had wine or beer, you could use that. And drop in a little gum arabic, which is a binder, so that the ink adheres to the paper. So when iron gall is first put on paper, it looks like this over there. Is that your right, left? Over there. And as it ages, it oxidizes, changes color. So most of the things you were looking at looked like this other image, right? It had been on display or touched and oxidized, so the color changes to this iron-looking color. Let's look at this. This is the Declaration of Independence. And on the lighter one, that was when it was fresh and before it went on tour in the 13 colonies. Being that it was on tour, it degraded significantly, and it's almost unreadable now. This is its current state, somewhere in the Smithsonian or something. But this is what can happen to a well-loved document. I'm glad that a lot of them I saw did not look like this. Okay. So if you were a young child, a boy, not yet a man, you couldn't be sent off to school yet, and you would learn how to write from copybooks. These copybooks were a lot like the ones I mentioned for the ladies, where you see an image and you do your absolute best to replicate it just by looking at it and doing it, right? And this was the way until 1791, when the very first all-American copybook was made, this one. John Jenkins came up with this book, and in it, I think it's 85 pages. It's 85 pages of thorough instruction. Why is the letter this shape? How do you get this shape? How do you manipulate the pen to get this shape? What shading should there be? Should there be shading? So all those things were in here, whereas in these copybooks, it didn't tell you much. So now we're going to get into one of the documents that somebody here transcribed, okay? The darker image is the Petition of Inhabitants of Princess Anne and Norfolk Counties from 1776. This is just a few years before John Jenkins' book. So whoever wrote this would have been following that of Italian hand. And if we look at it, we can probably tell the gender of the person that wrote it. Who wants to guess? It was a man, yes. And if you look closely, you'll see that, oh no. Okay, these H's, C's, and V's are all in line with the H here and here in round hand. But you'll also see that there was some creative license in making the letter C. I'm going to walk over here. Oh, okay. Okay, so your letter C here, it should look like that one up there, but it looks kind of like this one, married with that one to create that. So knowing the hands that these writers were using or referencing will help you determine the text that you're reading. Okay, what is this? Okay. Here we have 1810, the Staunton City Registry. In this, you'll see that this person was another man, likely in a hurry, and hadn't yet prepared their quill correctly or let their pen tip get a bit dull. Why do I know it got a bit dull? Because when I look here, under Sally's name, you see an ink drop. Ink drops don't happen when you have a precisely cut and sharpened quill. You also see here in the word, what is that? Sorry. No! What are you doing? This is why I prefer paper in my hand. Oh, okay. You'll notice that some of the letters are not shaded. None of them should have been shaded. But you'll see up here in Mr. Moffat, in Mr. Moffat's name, you have heavy shading on your downstroke on your letter M. There should be no shade at all. It should look more like Lucy Batten's name down here. Stop it. Oh my gosh. Oh no, here. Okay, it should look like this name here. What'd you say? Battles. Right, it does. Yeah, because there is a loop in that ascender after the double T, but the T's are crossed, all of them, which tells me this person is not a professional. But that's a good observation. Okay, so after all of that, after everyone is following the Italian way or they're coming up with their own interpretation, this guy, Platt Rogers Spencer, develops what is considered the ultimate penmanship type, Spencerian. Spencerian is my favorite, and he was teaching it in Ohio. Many, 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 many people went to his school where they did not imbibe in alcohol. They only focused on putting pen to paper, mixing ink, cutting quills, and sometimes playing music by candlelight. This is from the 1845 Freed Negro Registry, which was written after Spencer had shared his new angular system of writing. So here we can see some changes in the production of letters. The letter K here, K in kitty. This K follows the K that is suggested by Spencer in the white box, but it's not exactly like that K. This tells me that this person, not a man, probably a woman, took some creative license in seeking out new information and applying it to what they were writing. The same can be said about this L over here in Leonard. Not every L in this book, and this book was written by the same person from beginning to end. Not every L looked the same, and this was the one L that stood out to me. So their L's typically looked like this one in Italian hand next to the letter M. But on this day, whenever they entered this, they decided to zhuzh it up a little, which I like. So today, when I'm looking at all of the documents that were there, I can see if a man had something to do with it or a lady had something to do with it. I can see that a lot of influence was garnered from the Italian round hand, a little bit of English round hand. But I should say that at the time, people who went to school to learn script, they would have studied up to 10, maybe 15 different lettering styles. So I, as myself, I know 11. If I don't have that book open next to me, I can easily slip in a letter from another script style, which could have happened with those other items that I showed you. Or, I don't remember what I was saying. Okay. Right, so calligraphers today, we all get together at an annual conference. It's called IAMPES, the International Association of Master Penmen, Engrossers, and Teachers of Handwriting. Every year we get together somewhere in the country, sometimes outside of it, where we meet for a week. We study different scripts. We take them home, and we share them with everyone who wants to learn them. And that's it. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Yes?
How do you confirm like hunches about who might have done a document, or is it like the content of the document, or like how do you know like what about something makes it look like a man's hand versus a woman's hand?
That's a good question. So let's see. We'll look at this one. So this one tells me that it's a man because of the spacing in the letters, the height of the ascenders, the length of the descenders. Whereas if a lady had written it, it would have been a shorter X height. The strokes of the ascenders and descenders would be less, they'd be shorter. And the letters would be closer together. They would almost look like, what? I don't know. It would be scrunched. It would be scrunched together, and there would be a little more femininity, for lack of a better word, in the construction of the letters.
And this like based like or it's based on I'm reading a letter from a woman to another woman or something that said, and you've had enough like examples like that show.
I've looked at a lot of things that are unauthored, like there's no Dear Sally from Deborah, right? There's none of that, but in studying scripts of the past and instruction books, specifically for ladies' hand versus not ladies' hand, I can see the differences. They're very subtle, but they're there. Yep. Yes?
I didn't pick out when the first copybooks appeared, and I'm thinking of the late 17th, early 18th century.
Okay.
Stuff we have here.
Right.
This sort of transition from calligraphy into more modern stuff. So when did the copybooks appear?
The copybooks appeared in the 15th, the 16th, and 17th century in Europe, right? And people brought them over on boats and kept them, studied from them, sold them, until Mr. Jenkins decided to create his own. Okay, so, copybooks are like impossible. I have tried to do a copybook and not knowing how you're supposed to hold the pen, what shape nib you should be using, the thickness of the ink that you're using, that all determines the outcome of the letters on the page. And when there's not extra words explaining portions of the construction of letters, then it's by trial and error, mostly error, and then giving up, that you either don't learn it or stick to it and try to. Okay, thank you.